Wednesday evening is here again. Welcome back to Alpha to Omega Conversations for a New Earth. We are so excited. Tuesday is officially our favorite day of the week. Is that a true statement?
Let's do the same thing. Favorite night of the week. Look forward
Trying to keep all parts of myself coherent and present while I speak, and it takes a pause sometimes to make sure the truth is what comes out.
Amen. That's part of the lesson today, right?
Yes, it is. The syzygy conversation continues with conversation 16 tonight. We have been attempting to tether together these forgotten dualities that are very present in a lot of ideologies in different religions and cultures, but very much forgotten in our day-to-day language and a lot of the way we view spirituality, Christianity, and a lot of things that have really just sort of been diluted over time. So very excited to jump back into it. And we already have Brian here with us tonight. Got the hearts flying across the screen already. Angie, so great to see you as well. Good evening. Great to have you with us.
So grateful to see you here again.
Yes, and we've got kind of an exciting announcement that we'll save for closer to the end about this idea of a group conversation that we realize is kind of missing. Like, we love doing the hosting and bringing a guest every once in a while, but more than the comments, we'd love to hear everyone's voice as well. So we've been working on an idea that we'll share a little later in the show. But for tonight, let's just jump right into it. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, we are all about the comments. We'd love to hear from you and see you wherever you are. Any questions or comments you have. This is very much an exploration where we are attempting to decode and understand ourselves and each other better. So we'd love to hear from you. Nothing that we wouldn't like to hear. So please include any thoughts and ideas in the comments. So tonight, conversation 16, we are doing these emanations and archetypes, which, if you haven't heard that before, in deciding what direction to go with our show after kind of healing through a chakra journey, we were like, what do we do? And the archetypes of the constellations are very present. We all kind of know them, and we were trying to think of a way to weave that in. And Alyssa, in her study, found these ancient syzygies from Gnostic texts that were kind of discovered around the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls, where this duality was presented that seemed to weave really well with the archetypes. So our first conversation a few weeks ago, we did, let's see if I can remember, it was mind, which was nous, and truth, which was aletheia. And it was this idea that the mind, as a questioner, has constant access to truth. So that was really cool. And then last week, we did word, which was logos, and life, zoa. So again, this idea that as we think and are curious, those thoughts become the story of our life. And as we tether it together, we can be the architects of that story and make it really beautiful. Tonight, we move further into the story of ourselves and each other with Anthropos, which is human. We're not going to say man. A lot of people, it's man and woman, so it's human. Anthropos, and Ecclesia, which is assembly. But interestingly, it's really the word that was taken to mean only church, but it's much bigger than just church. So Ecclesiastes, ecclesiastical, a lot of you have heard that. This idea of an assembly or a gathering has really been confined to the idea of a church, which has some positive aspects, but also some limiting ones that we'll address tonight. So how are you feeling tonight, Alyssa, as we go into all this and move forward in the syzygy conversations?
Such an important conversation about conversations. So I'm excited to get into it. I think there's so many good things for us to uncover just by allowing ourselves to see how it is that we communicate, see what stops us from communicating, and see how and why we limit ourselves from validating or connecting in a positive way with other perspectives, regardless of how it contradicts your own.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. And it's all about finding that space first within yourself and then within your assembly or your community or wherever you find yourself. So before we start, I'll just put this up on the screen for everyone to see, just as a kind of brief overview of the direction we're going. So you can see kind of a familiar charting of the archetypes in order, beginning with Aries. And it's been fun as we go to find a word that represents the archetype. Authenticity came out so strong with Aries. It's like that cardinal leading spark to get something started. And then Taurus became like this like staying power to tell the story of your life. So we got authentic Aries, storyteller Taurus. I know what I think Gemini is going to be, but we'll see. I'm not going to like commit myself to it. We'll see if it turns to be true by the end of the show. But this idea that there can be a way to bridge these two syzygies. Tonight, again, it's human and assembly, or individual and group, which is really exciting. And that's really what our individual power is all about, is like finding a way to be yourself while part of something that's also bigger than yourself. That's like our human experience. So as we were discussing all this and getting ready for tonight, a couple things came through, Alyssa. There was like this idea of the origin story and maybe aspects of it that have been omitted or left out for the most part. And part of that was starting to come through for you. Would you like to kind of lead us into your thoughts of where this idea of man sort of coming into the stage really begins?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do my best. I'm definitely not a pro at this at all, but every aspect that we've been going through, the duality and the syzygies, I should say, are actually so it is quite it's perfect actually to kind of go into anybody that doesn't really know much about Gnosticism or like what their beliefs were. It might be helpful to have a little bit of history about it, because when I started learning about this, I'm like, this is fascinating. How have I never heard this? And why, it's just, regardless of believe it or not, it's fascinating enough to be welcome in conversation. So I would love to share what it is, how I remember it, but don't quote me on this. So basically, from their perspective, and all of these books were literally, they're thousands of years old. They were found right around the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they wrote from the perspective of like Mary Magdalene and John the Beloved, and there's like 5 or 6 different people, and it's literally the stories from their perspective of what Jesus was teaching all this time. But at some point, when like the big, I don't know if it was Catholic, but the main religion back thousands of years ago that wanted to kind of like take control and use what Christ's teachings were to kind of benefit themselves in a way, they actually took out and admitted, and I don't know if they changed it, but they certainly like only wanted to share the parts of the Bible that they could use in a way that felt good for them. And these ones were not omitted at all because they were hidden. And the Gnostics were actually killed off, like thousands and thousands of people all over. Eventually, this church went out and just killed everybody, all the Gnostics, everybody that was not a part of their church. It's this very, very sad story, but they hid these, which is why we have them now. And they're actually, like, from my perspective, even more true because they haven't been altered. They were found at the point where we could like visually see them, take pictures of it and whatnot. So from these texts, this origin story, and this is my retelling. Again, don't quote me. So Sophia, which is wisdom, there is like this original, let's call it like God worlds and consciousness that existed at this point. And Sophia was the emanation of source that was wisdom. And in this wisdom, in this archetype of wisdom, she herself, for whatever reason, knew that there was something more that could be created that hasn't been created. And it was done in and of her own like volition. It wasn't like a collective decision that the whole thing made. And it was, from this story, it was her decision that she made separate. And the decision was to create life that basically did not remember. It was the first moment that consciousness began to exist without the tethering of all the consciousness that already was collected. So this is the first time a child is born. That's like the experience of, whoa, what is this? Who am I? What is, all the questions that can come up from that. And that was named Demiurge. So she creates this, and it's called Demiurge, and it's a consciousness. And from there, the consciousness, which is names itself Yaldabaoth, and it has like archons, but it's like this consciousness that believes itself, like, oh, I don't know what I am, and starts to say, oh, I'm God, I'm all that exists, and starts, having its own creation. And I see this part kind of like very parallel to like the Pinocchio story, where Geppetto is this creator. He starts being able to create all these puppets and these stories. And at some point, one of these puppets come to life, because in the Gnostic story, he creates the first human, but it's lifeless. It has all the aspects, has fire, air, wind, or all the different parts, and it's put into what is human, but it was lifeless. And Sophia secretly, but out of love, breathes her own consciousness and brings this character to life, which was made of the aspects of Yaldabaoth, his consciousness and his matter, that was all of his creations in all these different places, and then breathes its soul basically into this to bring it, to animate it to life. So this is the story of the first human that existed in this material world. And it is the first time where it's both consciousnesses, Yaldabaoth, the one that forgot, like the ego, the mind, and the heart that remembers, the soul that remembers. And both of them are finally in matter, conscious and aware, and also asleep. So it's a beautiful story, and it's so cool. And basically, the rest of the story we can go into another point, but that's where we see that human design enter the story. And that's where we're at in 3, is human is finally brought together. Mm-hmm. So totally correlates. So fun to talk about. But yeah, did you have a specific question with that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's really funny that you mentioned Pinocchio, because that did come through really strong. And interestingly, like the Greek word anthropos is man with a face, or man with an eye. And the Italian word Pinocchio is Italian for wood with an eye. And so they really are 2 words that mean the same thing. And it's this idea of taking an inanimate thing or a lifeless thing and breathing life into it. And it's such a powerful idea. And this Gemini syzygy takes us back to that origin point of when that first happened. And so I think the biggest part of the story you shared that gets often omitted is this idea that the physical architect and the spiritual architect were counterparts, and that they were a team working together. A lot of times the creation is really just like, they created man and they stuck their breath in him. But the way you had read about it and the way you're telling it, there was much more to it. It was like this curious, creative demiurge, which is just like a architect of, physical things, made this form, and then this divine creatrix mother breathed the breath of all life into him. And that syzygy is like totally gone from most of the modern retellings of that I've heard now. So how important is that duality in our existence that we've been talking about for 3 weeks now? How important is that?
The story altogether is that masculine God creating all this stuff. Like, where is the woman? But in the story, it's like there she was the whole time, but yet this masculine aspect took all the credit. And it was kind of on purpose. The way that it was told is almost like she chose to animate it. And it's just like the story of Pinocchio, where literally he believes this Pinocchio just came to life, and he created it. He created Pinocchio. Wow, this is the best thing I've ever created. But in reality, you see there was the blue fairy that came and allowed and breathed it to life. She brought it to life, and then it was his greatest creation. And in all reality, it was to help him learn the lesson of love and companionship, and to be a part of his story in a way that he didn't necessarily feel threatened, because he kind of took credit for it. It's like our children, this is a part of me, like our ego wants to be like, I'm going to breed them to be just like me, and I can take all the pride in how great of a child I have. But the real thing is what really happens and how much it tests us. And the real truth of having children is actually for us to learn what we didn't like and how harmful it was, and finally play the other role. And hopefully someday real parenting will be more like, how can we protect and serve these children in a way that we honor their unique individuality, instead of trying to create them to be something we want them to be.
Right. Yeah. To maintain both aspects, both sides, and allow it to be a journey rather than like a prescribed walk that we take, that we already know all the answers and we already figured all that out. And you just have to listen to me and you have to do what I did. Maintaining that curiosity, we see how hard it is from the very beginning. It's like, I did this, I know this, I can teach this what to do next. And then now we've got the thousands of years of whatever happened since then to prove that there was probably a lot missing from that experience. So the first couple conversations were all about keeping the thoughts curious and not just assuming that I'm the best and I'm the greatest and I know everything, but allowing yourself to wonder, is there more? Is there something I'm missing? Is there more to it? So what is important to remember when it comes to our place in this life now? Like, are there certain practices that it's really important for us to do so we don't forget, like, I'm creating the story of my life. I have a mind that is constantly needing to ask questions rather than know answers. Is there any like fundamental definition of a human or anthropos that we need to remember for this tonight? Like, I guess to boil it down, how should we view anthropos in the word that we're talking about for the syzygy? What's like, we already understand the duality, that it's half created by Demiurge and half by Sophia, but is there something about ourselves that we should remember as we get into tonight's conversation?
Well, I think the most important is going to be our ability to express ourselves, because there are so many different aspects of us. And we always bring up the no bad parts and learning to actually engage with all aspects of our consciousness, of our psyche, of the parts that feel shattered or shadow work, or all the parts that are kind of hard to receive and talk to. If we see it as a valuable member of our psyche that just needs to be brought back into balance, needs a seat at the table, then we learn in our own body how to do that. And it makes it a lot easier to be able to do it externally as well. But the first step is in the honest expression, allowing yourself the space, because we as humans have so much in us. We're not just a one dualistic, simple thing. We have so much different aspects of consciousness working in us. We have thoughts, feelings, and they could all contradict themselves too. We have, emotions that are going to be confusing, but you could be happy and sad at the same exact time. Like, what is that? How is that possible? But all these things, if you find that through expression, they can all be valid, and you allow yourself to fully express, regardless if anybody else believes you, regardless if you're alone. Like, believe in the value of expression, because by doing so, you are basically like, Arthur King with the round table, allowing everybody a solid voice so that you can be like the one in the middle saying, you all matter. How do we bring this all together? How do we make everything matter? Where does it all fit?
Right.
And then it makes it a lot easier to then be able to do step 2, which is do that for another person.
Right.
Whatever parts are distorted and not having a voice here, it's basically we can't hear other people's. And it's just like a wound in us that makes it really hard to communicate.
Yeah, I think that is such a powerful way of framing the conversation tonight, that ultimately, when you take a human and you reduce it to its most essential parts, it is a being that is here with a unique expression. And that expression is valid, and that expression is important. And allowing ourselves the space to express is fundamental to who we are. And it feels, especially with this time of year, with the recent tragedy that's taken place, I don't mean to go into that, but it just feels tethered together that ultimately we deserve the right, and where we live, we have the right to express ourselves authentically, peacefully, and fully. And nobody has the right to take that away from us. And I love that. And I really appreciate that you brought that right to the forefront of the conversation. And that truly feels like that's what Gemini is all about. And that's what's written in the stars, is like, even if I am eternal and I can't be killed and someone I love passes away, I deserve the right to express that I want to be with them. And I deserve the ability to change my stars based on that expression. So it feels really powerful. I really appreciate that. underpinning, and I think we can build off of it. Before we keep going, want to give a couple quick shout outs. And a lot of you, I don't recognize the names, but if you are joining on Instagram or Facebook, we would love to hear from you. Any thoughts, any comments? Tonight is going to be all about the fundamental human ability to express and the blocks that may stop us and ways we can manifest that more fully. Quick shout out though to my sister, Uncut Kel on Instagram. Great to see you. I think it might be the first time. So great to have you joining us tonight, and would love to hear any of your thoughts. I think for me, when I think about expression as teenagers, my sister and I both, it was like fashion labels, and it was like publishing companies, and it was TV shows, and like this is where we went with our dreams and our goals for our life. No one's going to tell me what to do. I get to be my voice, and I get to express however and whatever I want. And it was all about creativity, art and music and books and writing, and all that was so fun. And it's hard as you continue on to keep that alive, but I've always admired my sister for that, and all the creative outlets that she's now doing with drones and with images and with all the cool outlets that she's got over in Kanab, Utah, where I grew up, is really, really cool to see. So that art of expression is so beautiful. But as we do that, sorry, go ahead.
So I second that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool girl.
Super cool. So as we do that, though, now this other element comes into it, which is assembly, which is this idea that as we are individual, we are not alone. And there are those around us that we've got to keep stock of as well. And we can't forget that we're part of a whole, or we're going to have a pretty quick awakening. So what are some of the thoughts that you have initially as you start to learn that you have this power to express, but you're also part of a larger group that also has the power to express? Sounds kind of like a recipe for chaos. So what are some of your initial thoughts about how these two pieces fit together?
Well, giving space to the chaos. Like we as parents, anybody that's a parent, especially if you have more than one child, it's like you just have to learn how to hold space, and it takes time. And so you got to be committed to basically believing, yes, it takes time to hear different perspectives. And yes, it takes time to see how we fit together. But it is ultimately of everybody's highest good that we band together as a unit to make those kinds of like decisions that do affect more than one person, and to really understand the perspectives that exist and believe that they're valid for their own reasons. And that's why it's pairing with Gemini is in Sagittarius, which is all about wisdom. It's about teaching. It's about this capacity to collect and share wisdom. Mm-hmm. You know, it is the willingness and capacity that we as humans literally have to be like, work together as a group to accomplish incredible things. And it is when we drop the stories that aren't serving us, as far as this competition, or that if they have this gift or they see it differently, that it means something wrong or bad about us or about them. And instead believing, oh, we're all supposed to have different perspectives. And it's okay. It's not even just okay. It's really cool and incredible. And going from Mormon religion to like having more of an open mind of like, I am okay talking about any and all different types of beliefs. And I don't need to be wrong or right. I am okay just being like, that's so interesting. And engaging in the conversation and allowing that to become like alive in me. Like I can allow all beliefs and thoughts and feelings to be valid, and whatever ones end up like staying with me, stay with me. But I can hold space and feel what that feels like and get curious. And then I trust that whatever is meant to stay with me literally will. And if it doesn't, then it won't. I don't have to be really attached to anything other than what I can be wise about, like sharing what over time has stuck with me and what it means, but I don't have to be right or wrong. And that changes everything.
Yeah. I so appreciate that aspect of you, because you truly do. Alyssa has this curriculum that she made for our kids called The Universe Inside Me. And she truly does embody this view of a full ecosystem within me of thoughts, feelings, beliefs, past, present, future. And she has the ability to hold the space for all that. And it's really important when you have 5 children in your house, because there are so many thoughts, ideas, perspectives, feelings, And if you can hold the space for all of them to be valid, they have room and they have space and they can get those feelings out. But it can be so difficult when they feel like they're opposites, that there has to be like this me or you, one or the other. One kid, the loudest kid gets heard and the rest, don't get a voice, and we end up doing what one kid wants and not the other four.
Right.
And that's a lot to balance. But you've really taught me that, the value of viewing yourself as an ecosystem and starting to question. And when I met you, and I want to hear your feedback on this, one of the questions that was like the biggest standstill is like, what do you want? Like she would ask me, like, what do you want to do? I didn't know. I hadn't spent enough time validating myself. I'd spent a long time validating others and trying to make others happy. But it was really difficult for me to start to find the space within myself to find my feelings. And without that, it was impossible to do the same for others. So before we get to some of your guidance there, I think Angie has a really good insight into this whole idea of like finding our place in the cosmos and our lives and ourselves. It can be hard. And this is, I think, one of the reasons what really blows her mind is that history over time is considered or like really reduced to like folklore and fairy tales. Like these most incredible nuggets of wisdom are like, oh yeah, I know that already. Or like, that's just a silly fairy tale or whatever it may be. When truly they, like even Pinocchio, for example, that truly feels like a mirror of the origin story with elements that are forgotten in like all the important places. And if the author of that would have told it right, he probably would have got beheaded. So he found a way to weave it into a story that he could tell without going to jail or being, martyred or whatever. So that's a really, really important call.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about what we're saying. Like, if it's okay to have different perspectives, like if you don't have to attach, and it doesn't have to be true or false, it could just be like interesting, and then see how it feels. Like pull that into your heart and see how that feels. You can actually be like, I don't really care whether it's a story or not. Like it feels this way, and it makes me it reminds me of a truth inside me. And that's kind of like the whole point. Like when we go off of, is it true versus what does it feel? Does it feel true? Because if it feels right and feels true, that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter whether it was a story retold or it was a parable, and it wasn't a real one. It was just a parable. So it doesn't count. Like that's how Jesus taught. It's like, oh, but it wasn't real stories. No, like there was a reason why these stories were told, because of the way it could help understand something about yourself.
Right.
So, take what the information is and see how it applies to yourself. See where it's valuable, where there's some internal looking inward, and see, does this fit with me? Does this remind me of something? Because true awakening is about remembering. So when something excites your heart and it's like a feeling of home, a feeling of remembering, that's when you can get those chills. Like something is true about this. You are capable of remembering. And that's the difference between like holding on to truths because you have collected this remembering, this awakening, versus attaching your thoughts or ideas or other people's ideas. Oh, it's true. They said it's true, so I'm going to hold that inside my psyche as the truth, versus believing that it's a part of you. If it's true, it's a part of you that you don't have to remember because you've awakened to the memory itself. It's like a part of you don't have to know because it feels a certain way, and that's all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
It feels true. So
yeah,
good enough for me.
It's been a huge mindset shift, and that's been so freeing and liberating to escape from the matrix of needing to know, and one thing needing to be right and the other thing needing to be wrong. And that is such a fearful place to be, because you're either going to heaven or you're going to hell, like all day long in every decision you make. But allowing the space for everything to be what it is, and for all of it to be you, and for you then to have the opportunity to find space for it, it changes the game and it puts it in a whole different place. So when it comes to yourself first, and you mentioned this idea of like validating your own expression, that's something that was completely foreign to me when we first met, that you've probably line upon line really helped me understand. But for those that want to know how that starts, where does that discussion with yourself truly begin as you try to find how you feel?
Well, it's in the discomfort of being vulnerable, and you can start doing that without having any other onlookers. So allowing yourself to get comfortable hearing yourself speak, hearing yourself cry, hearing yourself feel, and then finding words even when nobody's listening. So like there's capacity for you to validate yourself even when someone's disagreeing with you and they don't agree. There's also just like, you don't even have anybody else to talk to, but you can hear yourself. Like you were given both of these parts, and they were intentionally meant to be like this, your full capacity to, in and of yourself, love yourself. In and out, feel completely whole and valid. But it's distorted when we feel like, oh, we have, in order to speak, or if you talk to yourself, you're weird, or you're this, or you're that, or when people try to make you wrong, your thoughts, your feelings, oh, you're wrong. It's like, oh, I can't trust myself. Oh, I thought it was this. Oh, I'm so stupid if someone shames you. So we get pushed literally and figuratively out of our ownness, out of our truth, out of our self, in order to create this ego of, am I good enough now? How about, do you like this version of me? How am I? That's the part that has to be brought back in. That's the fragmented part. And these are all the different aspects we can literally fragment to try to be something we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally in finding those voices and allowing them to be a part of you. Being like, okay, but guys, we all do deserve to be back here. Why did you go out? Like, why do you not feel like a part of this whole consciousness? And not that it all has to have one voice, but if they're all talking constantly, it's because they're all connected. And that makes it easier to kind of read your body. But the parts that feel super disconnected or hard to reach is because it doesn't trust, and it's been rejected kind of from the self. And that takes a little more attention. But I know I went a little bit further than you asked.
No, it's perfect. I think the way you helped me understand it at first, which it made no sense to me in the beginning, but it started to over time, and now it makes complete sense, is you have everything you've ever wanted, and you've had it all along. And at first I had no idea what you were saying, but it sounded good. I think that little remembrance was true. Like, that must be true because I'm here. Why would I be here if I wasn't whole, if I wasn't complete, at least at some point, at some level? I know I've been through things and gone really strange places, but over time, I started to see this duality within myself. And now I feel like I've got pretty good awareness of it, that I really do have a mother and a father within me. I really am a counterpart unto myself. And I love that you said ownness, like I own myself, but it's also very similar to oneness. It's almost like your unity or your ownness is that ability to feel whole and feel that oneness within you. Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah. And I love you bringing up you've had it all along. And that's a good example of like, I don't understand how that makes sense, but it feels true. So that's where it's like, oh, I could feel the truth of that, but it doesn't even make sense, but it doesn't have to. If you start using that as your gauge, it's like, how is that true? Because I can feel the truth of that. And then slowly over time, it helps build out like the structures of the mind that's necessary to support it, and destructure all the parts that are not true, because it clashes with the thoughts, the mind that you've collected. And that's why it's like, it doesn't make sense, but it feels true. But that's the point. If it feels true, collect it. Okay, I'm keeping all the things that feel true with me, and I'm gonna allow it naturally to like reorganize this part of me. And the rest of like, that doesn't feel true. That's why like cleaning house in your mind is like, bring that thought into your heart. How does that feel? Does that feel true? Would that feel true to tell a child? Or does that feel wrong? Does it feel a little off? And it's like, oh, okay, like, something's off there. But the truth of that, if we go full circle, is if that is true, then it's just a matter of question, then where is it inside of me?
Right.
Because you've lost focus of where that thing is inside of you. The lies have distorted your capacity to realize what you are capable of and what you have inside you, and all the feelings that you really want and desire, and all the experience that you want and desire that is you aren't, because you don't know where it is inside you. If that is true, it's like, okay, then where is it? Where is it? And then you eventually can find it where it's hidden inside you, and then it'll manifest physically, externally too.
Beautiful and well rhymed also. And what you're saying really reminds me of kind of like, if we think about the purpose of life in most cultures, it comes down to some portion of like a hero's quest. It's like the quest for immortality, or searching for this whatever it may be, talisman to unlock the heavens, or whatever quest someone ends up on, searching for the Holy Grail, finding the key to open up the depths of hell so people can be born again. Whatever it is, it's like this quest. And the question that comes up from what you're saying is, if we look for the answer outside of ourselves, whatever the quest is that we find ourselves on, if we're looking outside of ourselves before we found it inside ourselves, what can we really find?
You can't find anything other than what you found inside yourself. Your external quest is something that is a replication of what you're looking for inside yourself. So if you found it externally and you've actually found it externally versus like an illusion, you thought you found it, but then it physically is like, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was, right? So like there's that experience, but you are truly on a quest to feel, because your creation is a feeling. It's like, that's why manifesting is so important, as far as you got to feel what that feels like. You can think it looks this certain way, but if you aren't, so many really good manifestors say you have to feel the experience in order to truly manifest what it is. So if we are to physically feel what it is we want at the end of this quest, you've already got it. It's there all along. It was already inside you. And then it's just about it physically appearing as it does. Mm-hmm. But if you are eternally like, I'll finally feel these feelings. Once I get there, you're going to allow yourself as far as you're capable to feel that joy. But if it's only a little part that you've uncovered of yourself, that joy will only be limited to the amount you can feel. Does that make sense? Do you understand?
Yeah, I think that ties really well into part of the discussion last week about Taurus and about the wound of sometimes feeling like we aren't there in Taurus, like in our abundance, in the story we're creating, in the reality we're creating. And really, the key is finding it now, wherever it is. Even if it's like, it's uncomfortable for me right now, that becomes whole. Or even if it's like, I want this relationship and I'm really, really searching for that relationship outside myself, but I know I've got to find it with myself, and I'm not quite where I want to be. Wherever it is, it just feels like it's about having the honest conversation and expression with yourself in order to meet you where you're at before you can really create something outside yourself. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's about for example, I'll finally be happy when. Okay, what is it you have at that point? Okay, so what is the story you're telling yourself now that you can't feel that now? So like, for example, I want to feel so grateful for everything I have. I want to feel like I have everything I need. So tell yourself here, do you have everything you need? Okay, I have this. Finding the gratitude in what it is you have. I feel so abundant that I sometimes seeing what others don't have, even though it's not the best way to go, can help you feel the abundance of where you're at. And if you are in a place of abundance, more abundance is naturally attracted to you. Mm-hmm. So find the feeling that you're looking for. Internally, you find that feeling. Even if you're creating it from memory, like there's a reason why you want that, is because you know what it feels like, right? So go to that feeling, even if it's through memory of what it felt like, and be so grateful that you can feel that right now. Even if it's in your own mind, even if it's not physically here, you can feel it through your own capacity to manifest, through your own capacity to imagine and be in that place. And once you pull that kind of energy and gratitude for that experience into you, you can hold that through the rest of the day, being like, I can't wait for this to appear, how it's going to appear in my physical world too. You're already tethered to the feeling and the excitement of how it's going to magically appear physically too. It's just about waiting for this, like it's going to appear its own beautiful little way, but you're already feeling it because you've already found it internally, emotionally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's about finding the balance with your duality in the moment you are now, not waiting for it to come based on something outside you in the future. Right?
Yeah. I don't know what it means by the balance of your duality. It's more like finding the resonance inside yourself of what it is you're looking for. I want to feel love. I want to feel so seen. I want to feel so connected to another person. So go into that experience internally. What does it feel like to do that? What are you saying? What are you looking for? And enjoy that fantasy in a way that feels so real that you feel fulfilled. And then you're like, ooh, I can't wait for this to appear in my day in its own little way.
Slay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's worth mentioning that the syzygies, and the reason we overlaid, part of the reason they fit with the archetypes, is the first 6 are sort of like within yourself, and the second 6 are more like within the world. So it's like starting on a small scale. And Alyssa mentioned earlier that Gemini's counterpart is Sagittarius, which Brian, we've got with us tonight, is probably like one of the most embodied Sagittarius archetypes that I've met. Just a very, very approachable wellspring of wisdom that has found a way to bring that to the collective. But I guarantee you, it started with a lot of personal journey and work within before it became something that was approachable and available to share. So I really appreciate, finding the balance within each of us as we look for ways to move through ourselves in all these different aspects and find room first within and then within the collective. So as we find space within ourselves, then it's like the challenge of having your voice and then balancing it with others, like you and I are trying to do right now in this conversation. And what are the keys to that? How do I receive what you're saying and then actually listen versus just like project my own experience onto it? What are some of the ways that I want to go inside your head? How are you perceiving me? And then how am I perceiving you? This is kind of complicated, right? It's like, takes a lot of effort to really listen, I think.
Well, I think the reflective listening is something that we've more so recently been like, this is a really important skill that we need to do this more often. So just taking time after someone speaks to be like, I heard you say this, which is what you're doing now in a way too, right? Once I say something, you're kind of reflecting it back. So I hear you saying like this or that.
Probably should do that more though, right?
Yeah.
Probably should do more.
But we often want to get our next word in instead of really take the time to digest a different perspective, because sometimes the different perspectives are uncomfortable because of whatever part of us feels like, well, maybe that makes me wrong. Am I less valid if you see it differently than me? And it kind of makes us want to exert our own perception versus appreciate the coming to the table just to understand each other. Like that's so great.
Right. Because it is, like you mentioned, vulnerable. It's like validation is vulnerable. But why? What is it because if I was to just sit here and reflect what you just said, which is, I think I did decent, but I kind of rushed through it even right there, where I'm agreeing with you and sort of jumping
fear of being wrong. So like any parts of you that feel like, what if I got it wrong? What if I can't understand? Or what if it's also the other side of it. The one that's actually speaking is being vulnerable by sharing its own perspective. And that one might be like, what if they didn't hear me right? What if they don't understand? So the vulnerability is the fear of rejection, the fear of being made wrong. That's what makes it vulnerable. It's not necessarily like a child. I don't think like naturally it would be like, I'm angry and I'm so vulnerable that I'm angry. It's just kind of like so just there.
Mm-hmm.
And once there's judgment of like making it wrong and that creates this insecurity that then makes it feel vulnerable because you are aware of rejection. You are aware of someone making you wrong or invalid. So it's really us being able to discern that that's their own stuff and still being like, you can feel that, I can understand that you have that's your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's still valid, and I don't appreciate you shaming me or trying to make me wrong, but I can hear yours. So you can still defend yourself in a very nice way and be like, well, agree to disagree. Like, I still honor myself regardless, but you can still hear what they're saying too and show them the way to validate even though we disagree. It sounds like you see and feel it this way. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I still see it this way. And I think that's true too. There's ways to believe as long as you rewrite the thoughts that you've been taught that say two truths can exist at the same time, or two perspectives are wrong if they contradict each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if we just believe that the individuality and the perspectives are valid just because that's exactly where they're at and that's the way that they've chosen to share it? And it's like, okay, we don't have to agree, but we can find a way for us to hold space and co-create something with where you're at in your perspective.
That feels so strong. That feels like lights me up inside to change the idea of, first, before I add anything, I'd like to reflect what you said and make sure I understand. It sounds like what you were saying is, before I even do, just listening to you with the intent of reflecting what you're saying makes me feel good. I'll just call that out. Listening with the idea that I have to add something and, like, one up it or keep it going is stressful. Listening with the idea that I'm going to just reflect back to her just feels good. And I don't think that's a space that I give myself enough, especially in adult interactions. With kids, probably. But what I heard you say is that often we hesitate to reflect what who we're talking to is saying for fear that it makes us wrong or that we'll get it wrong. So these fears that aren't coming from the other person, they're coming from within us, inhibit our ability to have quality conversations and find our place within the communities and groups we're in because we're afraid. And rather than express that or try anyway, we just like push it down and then power through. And then next thing we know, we've got distortion and conflict and competition. All of that really seemed to start with fear. That's what I heard you saying. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It's the belief that there's something wrong if you get it wrong, that you needed to know better, that two truths they coexist at the same time, that it's basically you feel inferior, that if I acknowledge yours, then what about mine? It's almost as if to acknowledge somebody else's that may not be where you're at, it somehow gives them this validation that discredits you, which isn't true. So you got to believe it's a good thing, and it's totally okay to validate someone and still hold your truth as unique and important. And you don't have to, you can share yours too, even if afterward it's like, that's so cool that you believe this and this. I heard you say this and this. Now I believe and I feel this and this. I actually believe that you deserve that same kind of validation. Like, that's so interesting. We see it so differently. How cool that we can just come and share it.
Yeah.
And we won't go away with like, oh, a new perspective.
Right. What I'm hearing you say is that we have a little bit of a lie trapped within part of our system somewhere, that two truths can't coexist, or two contradicting truths can't coexist, or for some reason, truth can contradict other truth instead of just coexist. As I'm saying it, it sort of loses its power already. But that if we can step up and validate whatever it is we're hearing, even if it triggers a story that is scary for whatever reason, that fear loses its power. And now we can meet each other wherever we are, even if it felt scary to begin with. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And it truly loses its power when you finally, it may, by saying it amplify the feeling of its power. But as soon as it's seen, then you have the power to extinguish it. So it's also like, some people are like, oh, you don't want to say it because then it gives it power. But in all reality, to let it out of you is to give you power to see it externally and then squash it. So I have found personally, and you guys can all have your own perspective on this, but when I finally speak my fear, oh my gosh, I literally have so much more power. It is in the hiddenness of my fear that it has the most power. By experiencing, and like we did this earlier, just by me saying, I'm scared about this and this and this, and you naturally kind of want to be like, well, you should think that way. And it's like the invalidation makes it more like, oh, well, but when we hold the space to just kind of be like, oh, that's totally valid to feel that way. I've felt that way too. It's like, yeah. And then it naturally kind of transforms to something better. I feel like fear really has its greatest power inside you because it hasn't been seen, expressed, and looked at and felt. If you feel it, then it's like it brings you back to kind of like, okay, well, it probably wasn't as bad as you felt inside. As soon as you say it and sit with it for a second, it starts to lose its power immediately after it's said. And the longer you sit with it, if you sit with it with like awareness instead of just, I mean, sure, you can say it and then bring yourself right into it and start telling yourself all the worst things that could happen. Or you can put it out there and be like, okay, feel it, and now change the story. Look for something better.
Mhm. Right. I would like to reflect what you're saying and then add a little something. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay. So what you're saying resonates really deeply. And those of you who are listening here on YouTube or on Instagram and Facebook as well, would love to hear any comments that you have or any personal tidbits that you could offer about this idea of reflection and validation being like taming the dragon of fear, being like this power that we have just to lean in a little bit to gain so much back. But I think what you shared that resonated the deepest, little light going on, is that once we give ourselves the space to express or validate something that at first felt very scary, very uncomfortable, now we give ourselves the opportunity to overcome it, or to see ourselves in relation to it in a way that we can frame and we can rewrite the story. And just going back to earlier, I've got to address it, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say. For me in my life, I'm very much at the early stage of this, where I still struggle very deeply with this idea of validation and validating myself versus what I should be, or what should be allowed or should be available. Just enough to the point of saying, like, am I missing something? And then in that space, we're starting to have the conversation of, can I just validate that? And even though it's uncomfortable, can I just say, I could see how that would be uncomfortable, rather than that shouldn't be uncomfortable, or whatever it is. Even just finding that smallest amount of space is making a huge difference.
Right. Because you're validating it by expressing it. So like, the fear is valid because you are having it. It doesn't mean that it has to be eternal. It doesn't mean that you can't change that feeling by thinking a new thought. But to invalidate it by not expressing it and by keeping it inward and just trying to overpower with other thoughts, it actually kind of festers. I feel like the best way and the quickest way out is kind of like purge it out, get it out, say it, and then do something with it. Rewrite it. Mm-hmm. There's something so powerful, like whether it's the written word or just vocally saying it. That was one of the main things that in my awakening and learning how to, with everything I've gone through, was a book and when my therapist said, start writing all these bad, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say that. I'm going to say terrible things. And I was like, how are you giving me permission for this? And I was literally scared about the things that were coming out. I'm like, I'm not allowed to say this. I'm not allowed to feel this. Like, I hate this person. There was rage and there was all these things, but it lost its power the moment I finally got it out. And then the truth could come and like restore itself. But there's something that needs in that expression that is the most healing thing. Now, you don't want to go and say this at people, because that leaves something that they have to deal with versus get it out, rewrite it in a more healthy way. So we're not just saying like express like the thoughts or the feelings and project it onto someone else. There are safer ways to like fine tune it by allowing yourself the space to dispose or validate it, and then find your truth and then share your truth. So there is a little bit of a difference between those two things, but it's a messy path to find out what that looks like and how. So to express it, I've always said, is better than to hold it at bay if you have to choose not letting it out at all. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the fact that we do make bad choices and just say things that are mean, it's honestly healthy, and it's more healthy than the keeping it internal and never allowing it to be seen physically. Yeah. Because what happens? You have a reaction. Somebody has something negative. You start to consider, did I really think that? Did I really feel that? Is there something that needs to be changed in this relationship? Was boundaries crossed for a long time? You finally have that opportunity because you did it. So you've expressed it, which is always good, but there are better ways if you're going to, there are going to be consequences to your action. Yeah. How you say it, I guess.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're sharing. It sounds like you're saying, like, we've got this idea of individual and collective, like human and assembly. That's the syzygy tonight. And if you jump into the collective with expression that is emotional, charged, heated, whatever it might be, that is a vulnerable place. And you may get a reaction that feels comfortable, you may get a reaction that doesn't. And that's what I'm hearing. And then my question is, how much will it help you if you found the safety to practice with yourself before you went
That's
through
the
that?
point. Like, you literally can become super sovereign in learning, like, the reactions of other people are going to be negative or positive, and you can keep those relationships safer if you learn how to do that for yourself, to the point where you've basically found the diamond in all this, and then you offer them that. That's going to be a lot healthier relationship than if you're just purging somebody else.
Right. And it feels like that makes a lot of sense. And it feels like resentment plays into this quite a bit. If you are pushing yourself past your feelings and you're not expressing, you are going to build resentment within yourself. And it can be hard to detect. I think relationship resentment is a little easier because you can kind of tell when you have bad feelings towards someone, but it can be really difficult to detect bad feelings toward yourself. I think I wasn't aware of a lot for like decades. What are some of the ways you can start to learn how you truly feel toward yourself?
Well, that reminds me of like the Katie Byron, judge your enemy, I don't remember what it's called, but there's like this worksheet. And basically at the beginning, she doesn't really say what you're about to do, but it's like, you go and you judge the people in your life. Like, don't hold back. Say how you really feel inside. And you're like, right, oh yeah, this person is so this, they did this, and it's so wrong. You're making all these judgments. And then literally the next step is now turn it towards you. Because if you're having all this anger and resentment, it's because there is in some way a way that you have also done that. And if you have also done that, where in you can you forgive yourself so that you stop like basically manifesting these kinds of relationships and interactions with other people? Because we are all mirroring externally. And if it's really affecting you, it's because internally there's a part of you that's off balance, that has done these things and hasn't forgiven yourself, or else it really wouldn't affect you the same way if you had truly forgiven, come back to center and be like, oh, well, I don't need to go that way because that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lie against myself. If someone did to me and I don't believe that, you bring yourself back to center. And when other people treat you that way, it's like, oh, that's theirs.
Right.
You're not stuck in it. It affects you so much because there's a part of you it's bringing attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So judge everybody else and then learn how to reflect back into you. And if you look up like Katie Byron, judge your neighbor, I think is kind of like the worksheet.
Yeah.
And then she brings you through like these 4 steps, which is truth. It's amazing of how you can turn these things back into truth and wholeness within yourself.
Yeah. We haven't done that in a while. I'm doing it tonight. And we'll post the link in the description after the show. So anyone who would like to go through that little self-check exercise, I'm so glad you brought that up. And that feels like an important thing to continue doing, because resentment can be like that silent little poison gas that can like fill your lungs pretty quickly. And I think for me, it was really hard to learn to detect that. But as I start to love myself, validate myself, understand myself better, it becomes more quickly apparent when something is off. And then just doing the expression, like you mentioned, can really help detect it. And as we do that, as you really learn to validate, first of all, I've learned from Alyssa that validation can be really fun. It comes to her naturally at this point. She is a obviously quantum healing architect by living, and people come see her that are struggling with finding their voice. And it's been incredibly healing to have that influence. But in order to do that, you found that within yourself first. So my question for you, as you start to see yourself as this all-encompassing, all-powerful, creative force of your life, and start to have these experiences with yourself, do you start to miss them and long for them and strive for ways to create those experiences with yourself, like in your day-to-day?
Them? Do you mean the experience itself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like, to reflect back to what I'm hearing, are you asking, once you feel what it feels like to be aligned with your soul, with your purpose, with your own emotions and your own creative powers, when you get off kilter, do you start to feel like, oh, I miss this aspect of myself and I want to return to it?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying. Like you've realized that you start to notice it's off. It's because you went back to center and you felt what it feels like to feel aligned and powerful in your own self, owning all your choices, being accountable to all those things, because that's what truly brings you that power again. Because nobody else could take it away, because I made the choice that got me there. I attracted this kind of person because something inside, bringing back that power. If you get off kilter, it's like, oh, something's off. If you've been too far gone or you forgot what it feels like, you're just kind of like navigating blind. But once you kind of like get back in the rhythm, it's pretty obvious once you start pulling away. And then it's up to you to be like, okay, what do I need to go do to get back in rhythm with my soul or my balance?
Yeah, that feels beautiful. And I think that's a really that idea that you can create rituals with yourself to return to help center yourself. And they can be built on energy work. They can be built on different like decision making modules that you can learn from different places. They can be built on this idea of the worksheet that we shared, that we will share, that Alyssa referenced. And I think one important thing to remember with that is you can share those with those around you, and you can find ways to tether yourself. And that's kind of what we wanted to share about our next conversation, that we feel would be a really good complement to these weekly conversations that we're hosting, to invite more of you to join us on a quarterly basis for more of a group discussion. Do you want to share a little bit of your thoughts of how that might go for the first time?
Are we trying to do that for next Tuesday, or is that in 2 weeks?
I think so, yeah, next Tuesday.
That will be the, what is it? Equinox?
I think the fall one's a solstice, but I get them confused.
Okay. Yes, I think, and it's the day of the solstice, or it's the week of the solstice?
It's the day of or the day after. And it's my mom's birthday. And I believe I just see this little notification. I believe you might be here, Mom. If you are, it's so great to see you. And happy early birthday. We are going to celebrate with a group Tuesday night discussion, and hope you can make it. But I know it's your birthday. What?
Yes. So yeah, I think we can take a break basically from this, and it will be more solstice centered. But it's really about being able to just connect with everybody and have these group conversations where everyone can actually hear your voice, because we love your comments, but we would love to interact more fully. So if you are interested in that, let us know. We'll make sure that you can get the link for that.
Yeah. Yep, next Tuesday. And that's the idea. Those of you who've, there's a few of you who've been with us pretty regularly, so we'll just send you the link. We'll join in, we'll do the video discussion and save it for the eons here in YouTube and wherever else it's stored online. And very much looking forward to it. But yeah, the quarterly equinox solstice is such a powerful time. We're falling into the season of harvest and celebration, and like all the major holidays and a lot of our favorite times of the year seem like they always come in fall. And it feels like a really important time to manifest. So many of us have been through so much in 2025. It feels like a lot of things really got turned on their head. And I think this next few months is really like the time to enjoy whatever it was that was paving the way for. A lot of us have really rebuilt so much this year, and we're pretty familiar with some of your stories. So, okay, yeah, appreciate this. Here we go with some validation. Thanks, Angie. Right after the eclipse, I didn't even know there was another.
It's a Monday, I think.
Okay, cool.
Tell us, Angie. You probably know.
Yeah, and we got 400s. That's what I'm talking about. Hundreds all day. Can't wait. Very much looking forward to it. And these conversations for us have been a huge shift, just preparing and spending more time deep in conversation together, where we're learning new things and challenging our ideas and challenging our thoughts and really questioning what we want to create in this world. And we appreciate all of you on your individual journey sharing that with us too. So looking forward to next week, just connecting more and leveling on where we feel we are, and just sharing and practicing this, reflecting and validating during that conversation. Very high vibrational activity. And Angie shared, I guess there's an eclipse on Sunday. So let's see if we can tune in and see if it's visible from wherever we are in the world.
Yes, please.
So,
love you guys. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.
See you soon. Bye-bye.